Hi, welcome to a new episode of Engineering Rebuilt.
Do you think you know a lot about construction?
Maybe we can provide a fresh perspective.
This is a podcast where we rebuild preconceptions of engineering,
Reclaim the narrative,
and share the voices of women from across the construction industry. Why not join us?
Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to our latest episode of the Engineering Rebuilt podcast. I'm really excited to be here with Sabaa Hashmi, together with my co-host Tina Gunnarsson. I'm Lina Soderberg. Sabaa, it's so nice to be talking to you. I'm really excited for this conversation. Do you want to start off a little bit by introducing yourself?
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm Sabaa Hashmi. I work for Balfour Beatty as a section engineer, and I'm currently working at Old Oak Common for HS2 as an assistant package manager, which is a section engineer but HS2 terms. We've recently finished off the piling and D-wall package, so we're sort of at the tail end of that now, finishing works off, and I'm wondering about what I'm going to do next now.
Amazing. Where were you before Old Oak Common?
So before that, I spent 5 years at Crossrail, again for Balfour Beatty. I actually started with them on their apprenticeship trainee scheme straight out of my A-levels, which I have just completed after 7 very long years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I just graduated with my BEng in civil engineering. So, obviously, that's great. It's been a really long journey.
So your first 2 projects have been Crossrail and now HS2. Those must be the biggest infrastructure projects in the country at the moment.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a bit weird, really, because where do you go from here? How do you go from 2 of the biggest UK projects ever to anything else?
There's always something bigger, I guess.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But no, it's been really good. Obviously starting out, I did my A-levels and I went straight into work with, obviously, university part-time. So at 19, jumping straight into the construction industry was a massive shock to the system, because first of all, you've student life to having to wake up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning so that you get to work at 7:30 is a big shock to your system, as I'm sure you can imagine, especially whilst the rest of your friends have gone to university and they're quite literally living their best life doing the total opposite. It was a big shock, but I'm glad I chose this route. It definitely worked best for me, and I've got so much experience now, and I've been able to do a lot of different things along the year, so it's worked out really well for me.
How did you find out about the apprenticeship scheme, and why did you decide to go down that route as opposed to, I guess, the more, I'm gonna say traditional route, but the more obvious way that most people think about it?
That's the killer question. I managed to get work experience with Balfour Beatty, I think, when I was 17. So while I was doing my A-levels, and I spent about 3 weeks with them. This was after the Olympics, so I spent 2 weeks at the aquatics when they were, I think, getting it ready for public use. And then I spent and I'm a big one. And basically, so I was on site there for 2 weeks, and then I spent a week in head office. And I mean, if I'm totally honest with you, I didn't know what to do. I knew sort of what I liked and what I enjoyed. I always enjoyed sort of doing practical things. And I was lucky enough just to be able to get work experience by default, just because my mum knew of someone who worked, I think it was mechanical engineering. So she managed to sort that out for me. And it was while I was there, I sort of spent a few days with different departments. And it was then when they told me about the different options that you can take, obviously, to get into the construction industry, and they mentioned the apprenticeship trainee schemes to me. And yeah, that was it really. I mean, I really enjoyed the work experience, and you're getting to the point where you need to make a decision of what you want to do. And I thought, yeah, this seems like something I could see myself doing. So yeah, I decided to take that forward. I still applied to university. I did all the UCAS stuff and as a backup, but then I also applied for, I think, 1 or 2 apprenticeship schemes and got this one, and the rest is history.
Yes, massive congratulations. Oh, you must be so relieved.
I'm so relieved, honestly. I can't begin to explain to you.
Are you looking forward to literally just having a job to worry about and not a job and a whole university degree?
I am, but I'm not, because I mean, I've with university, it's always been 1 day a week at uni and then 4 days at work. So I have had shorter weeks. So having to come to work 5 days a week, it's a bit different. But apart from that, no, I am excited. But then at the same time, it's a weird feeling, because everything that I've been working towards for so long is finished. So whereas previously I've always got university in my head, I've got coursework, I've got assignments, I've got exams coming up. It's just that it's always been in your head. So now it's sort of like I come home and I don't have anything to do anymore. So I'm sort of like, what do I do with my time?
What hobbies are you going to pick up now? Now that you've got all this free time, are you going to pick up something obscure?
I definitely want to do something. Literally today, I was looking at the station that I come to on my way home. Right next to it, there's a boxing studio, and literally every time I come out of the station, the music's playing, and it seems quite good. So I was googling it today to find out what kind of classes they do, how much they cost. So I think I'm gonna give this boxing class a go, especially because it's right next to the station I go to. So that's option number 1. And then, yeah, we just need to see what happens. But I'm open to suggestions. So if you've got any suggestions of what I could do with my time, please let me know.
No.
Because all I've been doing is just coming home and wasting my time watching Love Island and all of that stuff. So
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, me and Lina have bonded outside of work over things like bouldering. We went running and did like a 5K once a week. It was like a jog and chat kind of running.
I did actually at work. I did go climbing a few times they've got a little climbing club at work where a few of them go every 2 weeks after work. So I think I need to get myself back into that again.
I mean, I'm a massive advocate for just trying everything. Like, and I remember when I lived in London, we're not sponsored. We probably should be, but it was called ClassPass, and it gave you like a certain amount of credits for you to go try loads of different classes. So I remember trying boxing. I remember trying like pole fitness. I remember trying like aerial hoop and dance classes. And I was having like an absolutely brilliant time just doing one class of everything. So that's my like recommendation. It's just, yeah, try it. Try everything once, and then you know what you want to pick.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's the process of elimination.
We were on a previous episode we recorded. We were speaking to Louise Haining, and she was talking about her big hobby, which is sea swimming. And every weekend for the last two 2 years. I think basically any time of the year. She said she started in January. She goes swimming in the sea, and I don't know. I don't know if it's for everyone, but I'm now very tempted to try this out because I think it would suit me. I've also, recently learned how to front crawl, so I've rediscovered swimming. But yeah,
That is no, I've always been into swimming. I mean, I'm sort of since we were little, and I have dabbled in and out of going swimming sort of after work and stuff. But again, I'm the queen of starting things and then phasing them out and then getting back into them again and then not. So I think maybe I need to do that again, but I'm not convinced that you'll catch me swimming in the sea in January, not in this country anyway.
I mean, have you been to the aquatics? Is, I think, the most important question.
I've never been. Not since I did my work experience, which is absolutely ridiculous, especially because I'm in East London. It would literally take me about 15-20 minutes to get there.
I mean, I think that's it, right? I think that's number one of your list now.
I've got no excuses, and it's a station that I stop at on the way home. So
Well, there we go.
I need to add that to the list. Boxing one day, and then go into the aquatics and swim in another day.
It sounds like we'll fill up your extra 1 day a week easy.
This is what I need.
So I've actually got a question about, like balancing your studies with work, how you found that, and if you've got any advice, both for apprentices, but also people who are doing part-time degrees, people who are coming back later and changing careers and doing a degree on the side. How have you found that balance?
I mean, I definitely did for the first few years. I did find it really hard, and that was, I think, mainly because it's what I said. You've been living like a very nice life, like going to school, coming home, all of that stuff, and then out of nowhere, you're doing like a full working week with sort of university in between that, and it's what you said, trying to then balance going to work and studying at the same time, especially in those sort of main years where your peers sort of like 18, 19, 20, 21, like all of your peers are going out and having a good time because they don't have to go into uni until like 2 p.m. the next day. But then I've got to be at work first thing in the morning. So it was definitely hard. And yeah, it did take me a while to sort of stop trying to keep up with them because I'm not on the same page as them. We're doing two totally different things. Our requirements are different. So yeah, no, it was hard, but I think eventually I did get the hang of it, and it's just knowing that you do have to sort of sacrifice a few things just so that you can get the work done. And I found, for me personally, when I would come home from work, you know what it's like when you come home, you switch off. So coming home from work and then having to do work I wouldn't do a lot. My productivity at levels at home were just not where they needed to be, especially if I have sort of assignments and exams to revise for. So I used to stay behind at work a lot of the time if I had sort of deadlines come in, and that definitely helped. Sometimes I'd literally be in the office until 9 o'clock, but it means that I spent a good few hours getting a lot of work done. So it worked for me. So yeah, I think it's just sacrifice, really.
That's quite a deep answer.
No, but it's like you have to, otherwise because I did 1 year, I didn't do that, and I totally botched up 1 year, so I had to repeat a year and do 2 modules, which is why initially it was supposed to take me 6 years, but for me it took me 7 years because I failed 2 modules 1 year, so I had to repeat those. So that was sort of like, okay, Sabaa, you need to switch on now, stop having too much fun and sort of get your head down and just get it done.
I love that. That's like brutally raw as a reminder.
Yeah, literally.
I love that.
But I mean, it worked out well because I still, I graduated with a 2-1, so it wasn't all bad. But it's totally worth it, especially with just the experience you get all along the way and the people you meet. And also, I think sort of finding definitely finding people that you can work with. So if you are an apprenticeship scheme, get together with the other apprentices, and when you've got work to do, exams coming, all of you get together, get your heads down, and get your work done. I mean, that definitely makes it easier as well, having people doing it with you. Yeah, no, exactly.
I mean, that's what this podcast, and that's what the She Builds Collective, which is, I think, how you might have found you. That's what this is all about, right? Like finding people who are going through similar problems and solving them together instead of all going through it on their own. And it's all just about working together and empowering each other so that all together you all do really, really well.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, maybe we were about to say the same thing, but I was
think
going
the
to
same
ask,
thing.
tell us a little
Go for
bit
it.
about your dissertation and looking at how we improve retention of women in the construction industry, something that me and Tina are really passionate about as well. And looking for better answers all the time, so we want everything that you've learned.
Well, yeah, I've got a whole report on it, so I can send that to you.
Yeah, I will read it.
Well, yeah, so I obviously had to do my dissertation this year, so just completed that sort of April, May time as part of my final year project, and I decided to do it on, I don't remember the title word for word, but it was what the construction industry needs to do to retain women, sort of specifically within the engineering sector, as opposed to sort of the industry overall. Because obviously the construction industry, I mean, it's so vast. There's so many different areas that count as the construction industry. Like you've got sort of got commercial, design, and all these other things. So I mainly, and just from what I'd seen online, there was a lot of generic information for the construction industry as a whole, but I sort of did want to focus more on engineering specifically. So I mean, yeah, that was great. I sent out a survey. I don't know if you both responded to the survey, but I'm pretty sure, Tina, you responded to the survey. I got a massive thanks. Yeah, no, I got a sort of good response to the survey, which was great, and a lot of issues flagged, both past and present. I mean, one thing that definitely showed from the survey is experiences that people had 20 years ago are definitely not the same as the experiences people have now. So we've definitely come a long way from then, just with various examples of how women said that they were treated and sort of not taken as seriously 20-25 years ago in comparison to now. So I mean, that was obviously great, but then there were still things that were flagged up, and I mean, one of them was they were talking about the need for flexible working, which has obviously changed massively just because of the pandemic. If you spoke about flexible working in construction pre-COVID, people literally would have laughed at you. Whereas now it's way different. If people do need to sort of go home early or spend 1 or 2 days a week at home, it is possible now. So I think one thing that was mentioned is the pandemic has obviously shown that we can be more flexible with working hours and sort of days in the office. So we need to stick with that and not lose that flexibility that we've gained. I guess that's one positive to come from the pandemic. So that was one of them. I mean, another one that was mentioned by a lot of people was maternity leave and maternity pay. I mean, I know that's sort of a hot topic with everyone, but that's one thing that majority of the people, both men and women, flagged up. So women spoke about maternity, but then men also commented on maternity, but were also talking about paternity leave. Because I feel like now in 2022, like gone are the days where it's solely a woman's responsibility to sort of look after kids. Like guys want to be as involved as women do now. So that was quite interesting, and it's quite nice having sort of both sexes comment on that. So that was another thing that I really wanted to do with my dissertation, was I didn't want to focus on women only, and just mainly because I think we already know that the industry is a lot of men in the industry. So if we sort of want to change things and have an impact, it's important to get them involved in the conversation, because at the end of the day, they're the faces that you see in the really senior roles. So yeah, no, that was really good, and it was really interesting. I mean, back to the whole maternity thing, I know that I think recently, is it Langer Rourke have come out and said that they're going to be giving full pay to both men and women for 6 months, is it?
Yeah, or something very similar to that, which is really exciting. I think what you've said and what you've learned from your dissertation, and that like there's a high demand for it, that our current policies don't fit what our people actually want. And we want more of a, for parental leave not to be so gender based, but to give equal opportunities to all genders within that. But I think another interesting part of it is there's a lot of statistics that show that if you create more equal opportunities or equal access to parental leave, then statistics to back up the fact that does really impact your retention of women in the industry. I mean, looking at Scandinavia, that has the highest number of Sweden and Norway, who have the highest number of women in engineering, they also have some of the most progressive parental leave policies. So that's, if we want to, if we want women to stay, which I think a lot of these companies do, but it's difficult to achieve, then this is like a real route to doing that, and a really big tangible opportunity to making that happen.
Yeah, and another thing which sort of was raised also is providing, because I think depending on what you choose to do, you can take as up to a year off for maternity or more, obviously, if you choose to do so. But another thing that was raised by a handful of people is just providing more support to women, especially on their return, just because you've been out of work for a year, I mean, which is a long time. So yeah, giving them more support when they're transitioning back to work was sort of raised by the people who responded to the survey as quite important if we do want to keep them specifically with engineering sort of site management based roles. Some people suggested sort of check-ins throughout the sort of maternity leave period, instead of go for maternity leave, we'll talk when it comes to you coming back, sort of having regular check-ins with them throughout. So that was one thing that I think I did mention in my dissertation as suggestions.
As someone who went on like a year-long sabbatical without having a child, I would like to clarify, just that level of support is actually because... like I do, because people make assumptions. Oh my goodness. But that support aspect is so interesting, because I think that applies to, like say, not just parents, but people who take time out for mental health leave, people who take sabbaticals for fun or for whatever reason. There's so many people who I think would want that level of support. And I assume it's a confidence thing, because it's not like you forget your 20 years of experience, or it's not like you lose your level of ambition when you come back. It's, I think, to get your brain back in the way a company works. And it's so interesting hearing you, I guess, summarize these points that you've written about in your dissertation. So earlier today, me and Lina were writing an article about how do we retain women in construction, and you're literally listing the things that we have written about, and it's so like just it's such a great confirmation to hear that you're covering the same points that we think are important as just people who are in the industry, but you've gone out and you've done the survey, you've done the research, and you've arrived at, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. So you definitely have to send that across to us, and we'll quote you as a source. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, no, it was, I mean, yeah, doing this research project, it was interesting for me to sort of open my eyes to a bunch of stuff that I didn't even think about. Sort of even regarding maternity leave and maternity pay. Until doing this, to be honest, it's not something that I spoke about or even thought about, to be honest, because I'm 25 years old. I don't have children. It's not something that I'm thinking about right now. So I never even, it's just not really something that I considered. So I found it really interesting just for my own benefit. It was just learning all these new things and getting people's different perspectives. And I think sort of the last key thing that did come out of it was the need for more female role models, and just the fact that a lot of senior managers, you do sort of find engineers in sort of more lower levels as site section engineer, but as you trickle up sort of more project management level, you don't find a lot of women in those roles, which is, and it shouldn't just be, or you'll find one, and it shouldn't be sort of a situation where it's like the token female, we need a woman, so let's just get someone in. We sort of need to try and get to a situation where there is a balance between men and women in those more senior roles.
I think, and also, I mean, I don't have kids either, so it's not personal experience, but it's something I'm really interested in, and I ask people about, and also have learned a lot about from doing this podcast. But I think those are the sorts of levels where people start to have children, and just the way our policies and our society and everything, all of those external influences that you might not think directly can cause someone to stay or leave the industry, all of those kind of facilitators. I do think we see a lot of women leaving the industry around that time, because it's difficult to stay, because suddenly you need a different type of flexibility, or you need to be able to leave and then be able to come back, and you might need your role to look slightly different, or you might not be able to work the same hours that you've done previously, or maybe you can, but I think you see a lot more diversity at that stage in how women approach work, and what that needs to look like to make it feasible. And so, yeah, I think what you've done your dissertation on, that's so important. It must have been really interesting in understanding how do we not just want women to join the industry, but how do we create an environment in the industry which allows women to stay? Because I think at the moment, and I don't think anyone's doing it on purpose necessarily, but the way that we structure our projects and our job roles, I think we are excluding certain people indirectly, because we're not able to, we don't necessarily see how things, if we tweak things slightly, then it would make a massive difference for somebody, and allow them to keep working. So this has gone super quickly, and we're nearly out of time, but we have one question that we always ask, and I wouldn't want this one to be any different, and I'd love to hear your answer. So what would you like to see change or be different in the industry in 5 years' time?
No, I think for me, and I think this has sort of become more of a thing for me after I spent sort of the months doing my dissertation, is I guess I would like to see, it goes back to just seeing more female engineers in those senior roles, and not just because we need a woman in the senior role, but sort of to earn it, if that makes sense. And I'm not just talking about one, I'm talking about a few, especially I guess the people that I'm working with now in 5 years, it would be nice to sort of see some of those in those more management roles, as opposed to going into something totally different, which is what we, I guess, usually find.
Not just the people around you, but you as well.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you in a really senior management position in 5 years' time. I'm excited about that. I think that would be brilliant.
No, definitely.
We'll do hashtag Sabaa for senior management.
We'll
make it happen.
I think we should do that. I'm ready.
Yeah, and we'll have to create some really big infrastructure projects for you, because you can't go back now. And
I've been spoiled now.
Do you think, having worked on major projects for a very long time, do you feel like that's the type of project that you always want to be on? Are you looking for the next big major scheme, or do you ever think, oh, it'd be really nice to just go build a school somewhere? That'd be kind of nice.
That's only sort of happened by default in regards just to me being on Crossrail and then moving on to HS2. And I mean, I personally do think it is good to go to those smaller projects, just because, I mean, from these massive projects, you've got different teams to do literally everything. Whereas obviously in smaller projects, there's just 5 different people and everyone is doing various different roles to get the job done. So I think for my own development and just for my own experience, it would be good to do something smaller, just so I can get experience in different aspects of delivering a job. So no, I think that definitely is and should be on the cards, just for my own development, really. So yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I've always said that I've said this since I was little. I don't know why, but bridges have always fascinated me. When I say little, I mean sort of school teenager. So yeah, I'd definitely like to do something bridge related, just because I just think they're so cool.
You should look up.
That sounds so sad, but yeah,
it's not sad. I love bridges. I think they're really cool. And I've talked about it too much on this podcast already, so I'm not going to say anything more. Apart from, you should look up the E39 highway in Norway, because they are building some incredible floating suspension bridges. So the fjords in Norway are way too deep for traditional foundation systems that we've had, which is why they have ferries everywhere, because it's just not been technically possible previously to build bridges across the fjords. But they have some money, and this is a big problem for them because it slows down their transport. So they figured out, or they're starting to figure out how to build floating bridges. And they've not picked small places to explore this either. They've just picked some massive fjord crossings and decided that we're going to do some incredible floating suspension bridges, and they look amazing. So I think that would
maybe I'm going
take
to
your
Norway.
Major projects, bridges, yeah. Yeah.
It sounds super
very
cool.
cool.
I think bridges are wicked. They really do fascinate me.
And you're not alone. So Lina's built bridges that she's proud of. One of my proudest projects was a tiny bridge, 36 meter span bridge. So we're not talking major projects here. And we very recently held a weekend story on She Builds, where people sent in their bridge selfies. So you found your group of people here.
It's a bigger
it's a movement.
It's a bigger clique than you think.
There's a lot of us out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
On that, I think that's a really great note to end this episode on. We'll go out on bridges. Sabaa, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining in, and hopefully we'll catch you at the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Engineering Rebuilt. We hope you enjoyed being part of the conversation. Please join us next time to hear more diverse stories from people who are reclaiming their narrative to rebuild engineering.